Selamat malam semuanya. Kak Ellie sudah di sini ya. Halo, hello. Hi Ellie.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Hi.
Good?
I'm good. You?
Yeah, I'm fine. I've just arrived in Cirebon.
Oh, that's nice. Sounds you
Yeah,
are
I'm so
very
tired.
tired.
So tired, so tired. Um, yeah, we just departed from Medan like December 4th.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, we stopped by Jambi, Pekanbaru, Jambi, and Bandar Lampung. And then we like stayed there for 2 nights. And then we went to Jakarta for 2 nights. So we stayed over there for 2 nights, and we just arrived before Maghrib, like, and then I'm so
So
tired.
you separate with no, I mean you are now alone, not with Mas Farid, right?
Yeah, yeah. They Farid and Ali and my parents now they are going to Bumiayu, like
Okay.
Central Java.
But I
Oh,
can
there
see
is
he's
a
online too. He's
yeah
online too.
from the car from the toll road.
Oh.
Yeah, because my dad, like my father, is driving to Central
Mm.
Java.
So how long you will
Yeah,
stay there in Cirebon before you join them again?
like yeah, like 2 weeks, and then I'm going to Indramayu for another
Uh-huh.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe going um, to Bumiayu, to Central Java. But it's like go forth and back and forth because we need to apply visa, etc. And yeah, I know it's very hectic. Okay, so Kylie, thank you so much for joining us our Instagram, and thank you to accept, right? Thank you for accepting our invitation to be our guest and to be a resource person for tonight. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And I'm also thank you because today is the Human Right Day, and
Yes, exactly.
yeah, so at least we can talk something that contribute to the world for the better world.
Exactly. That's why we, like we holding this event like
Hmm.
tonight, like instead of Saturday night, because our regular meeting, our regular discussion is supposed to be on Saturday, like Saturday night with Let's Talk. But today is like special event. So
Hmm.
that's why, because this is like today is the last day of the 16 days activism or campaign anti-gender-based violence and also human rights, right? Human Rights Day. So that's why we celebrate and commemorate it together by having like a fruitful, hopefully fruitful discussion, and it's very beneficial for us. Like it's very useful for I think everybody. So, all right, guys, good evening. Greetings from me, Ira. I am the host of this special event, 27th edition of live on Instagram of Let's Talk. So this is a greeting. This is like the sign language of Let's Talk. So one of the like our members in WhatsApp group of Keluarga Let's Talk or Let's Talk family. So he gave us like this sign language of Let's Talk. So this is sign language. Thank you for
Oh,
joining us tonight to celebrate, to commemorate the Human Rights Day. So exactly today, right? It's like December 10th. And also today is the last day of the 16 days campaign or activism anti-gender-based violence. So that's why we're holding this event, this discussion, and we are so lucky we having Kak Ellie or Ellie Zarni here with us. So we're gonna discuss relaxed in a relaxed way, but also it's
yes,
very serious, right? It's serious issue, but we're
yes,
talking about it in a relaxed way, I think in a cool way. I think that's very important to discuss the topic, that's our topic today. So thank you again for those who joining this Instagram. So we are live on Let's Talk Instagram. So there's Kak Raras, Kak Farid, and Harry Ina Adi. So welcome. Okay, so we're gonna start our discussion, like relaxed discussion, because this is Friday night, so tomorrow is weekend.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna enjoy and have fun today, right, Kylie?
Yes.
Okay. So our topic today is feminist scholarship as feminist activism. So in this discussion, right, as I told earlier that this is the last day of 16-day activism or campaign anti-gender-based violence. So we're gonna talk about women's movement and feminism, and how women's movement and a feminist movement and feminist scholarship, they're interrelated, or they are like separate entities, right? And how they connect or relate to each other. So we know that it's not only Indonesia celebrates or commemorates the 16 days activism, right, or campaign anti-gender-based violence and human rights day, but I think it's like all over the world we celebrate it together. But I think it's not only about celebration or commemoration, but we need to make strategies, make plans, to make changes, to make something, right? To change something, to transform something. We're not only like talking, right? But we're supposed to be together, like make strategies, and we have to calculate them and talk about the weaknesses, the strength that we have, and what is our next strategies, our next plans. And I think we can't do anything, right, to end or to stop gender-based violence without like hand in hand, like to be together to stop or to end or to combat gender-based violence. Indonesia is, we know that from our long history that Indonesia is very, very rich with the local knowledge of women's movement, for instance, right? So Let's Talk had the chance to have a road trip and to have a podcast from Banda Aceh, from Medan, Jambi, Bandar Lampung, and we found that yes, we do have like rich local knowledge about feminist movement, about women's movement, right? And why? So we think that why don't we document, right? We don't have any documentation about the local women's movements. In Banda Aceh, it's very rich. There are a lot of stories about women's movement, right? In Banda Aceh, for instance, where, or in Aceh, right? In the province of Aceh where you live. So Kak Ellie is from Biren, so from Aceh, right? So I'm gonna like introduce Kak Ellie in a second, but just to give you overview about the discussion, our discussion today. So we need to have a documentation about the local knowledge, right? Local knowledge of women's movement. And we will discuss whether the women's movement and feminist activists and feminist scholarship or scholars, they really, work together, or are they like a separate entities or separate groups that are exclusive to one another? So do they have like alliance? Do they have like collaboration, right? And is that like solid? Is that they have militant, right, as a women's activist, either women's activists or scholars? So we're supposed to work together. So so what are the challenges that the women's movement in Indonesia face? I mean, why when I have like some interviews or some podcasts, so they said that it's not really solid, so the collaboration is not really strong enough. So why is that? What is the problem? So we need to talk about it. And if we learn from the stories, the women's movement and feminism or feminist movement in the United States of America, in America, so if we know that there is a connection between feminist activists, right, who doing the advocacy and protest movement, for instance, with the feminist scholars, right, with some scholars who really study about gender, about feminism or feminist movement. What about in Indonesia, right? Do we see that there is a connection? There is a relationship between the feminist activists who work on in the grassroots, who work in the communities, right, with the scholars who work in the universities. So yeah, so we're gonna talk about it in a second. I think the collaboration, the local knowledge that we have. So this is the key point. I think if we use it, if we use the local knowledge of women's movement from all over Indonesia, I think it's very, very beneficial, very useful, right, to strengthen our gender movement, our feminist movement in Indonesia. So, so we are going to talk about that, and also in the universities, right? In the universities or higher education institutions, I think we also need to be like open-minded, to have a policies of guaranteeing of the freedom of expression, right? And then like university can produce knowledge, can produce the knowledge about gender, for instance, feminism, and then work together with the feminist activists. So we are having Ellie Zarni here as our guest. I'm gonna introduce a little bit about Ellie Zarni. So I think some of you know her already. She already have a PhD. So I don't have it yet. But soon, yeah. Just wish me luck, pray for me.
Yes, you will.
Thank you. So Ellie Zarni, she is a native of Aceh, or she's originally from Biren. And we had the opportunity to visit Ellie Zarni, right, on the way from Banda Aceh to Medan. And we met Ellie Zarni with her family. So thank you for, thank you so much for your hospitality. So she has a PhD in educational leadership from Ohio University, Athens, Ohio. And her dissertation is about gender, conflict, and peace, the roles of feminist popular education during and after the armed conflict in Aceh, Indonesia. And she also received her Master of Education in Cultural Studies, Ohio University, Athens, Ohio. That's the same university, right? So your MA and your PhD, you have the same university.
Yes.
And her thesis is Peace Education in Asia, Learning from the School of Peace. And she got her bachelor degree in English education. So this is still, you're consistent, right? Like in English or in education. From Araniri University, Aceh.
Yes.
And also you got certificate in peace studies from the School of Peace, Bangalore, India. Oh, India. Okay. In 2006.
Yes.
And her research interests are popular education, social justice education, comparative education, peace education, adult education, politics and policy in education, interfaith, gender, feminism, social movement, leadership, critical theory, war and peace, women and peace building, qualitative methodology, and narrative inquiry history. So there are a lot of professional experiences of Ellie Zarni, like graduate or teaching assistant, educational studies department in Ohio University, and also database assistant, Center for International Studies Collection, Ohio University, working committee member, Interfaith Cooperation Forum, Hong Kong, educational officer, WIRO, Women Organization Aceh, and community facilitator, Pakistan Medical Team Aceh. So there are some awards that Ellie Zarni received, for instance, from Interfaith Cooperation Forum, Peace Award, the American Cultural and Education Foundation, ISAF, graduate assistantship from Ohio University, Margaret McNamara International Fellowship, Don Knox Fellowship, Educational Administration, Ohio University, Ford Foundation Alumni Awards, International Fellowship of American Association University Women. That's a lot, Ellie Zarni, Ellie. Wow, you get a lot of awards. So Ellie Zarni, Ellie, and me, so we are the alumni of IFP, International Fellowship Program Foundation. So I am cohort 4, Ellie cohort 6, yeah, Ellie.
No,
You're
8.
cohort 6? Oh, 8. Okay, 8. Yeah, there is a Kaana. Kaana also the alumni of
Yes.
the IFP program. Oh, you know her?
Yes, I know, but I haven't met in person yet.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
she's from Makassar. Yeah, and then we are member of ISJN, yeah.
JN, yes.
Okay, so we're gonna start our conversation tonight. Hopefully, it's everybody's having fun, and for everybody, for audiences, well, we are sorry that I can't accept your request to be live on Instagram, because this is only to have like guest and host, or the resource person and host or moderator. But don't worry, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, so you can type it in the chat, the Instagram chat. So I will read the questions or your comments and read it to Ellie. Okay, thank you so much again. All right, Ellie, are you ready?
Yes. Thank you
Okay,
for
so are you
introducing
at
me.
home in
Yeah.
Europe?
Yeah, so be
Okay.
aware if the electricity went out, okay?
Oh, okay. Hopefully not. Cross my
Hopefully not,
fingers.
yeah.
Yeah, I cross my fingers. Okay. Yeah. So I think this is like based on your experience and knowledge. This is not really conceptual questions, and this is
True.
not like dissertation.
Yeah.
This is not dissertation exam or thesis
Yeah.
exam, but this is not to test you, to test your
Okay.
language. But this is based on your knowledge, based on your understanding, and based on your experiences, right? So this is not really conceptual. So I just want to know, we're really curious about how do you understand and define feminism?
Okay. So when I share about feminism, it is a lot about my own experience. I start working with women's issues right after the tsunami 2004. And then at that time, I joined one organization that you mentioned earlier, Bejro.
Yeah.
It is women's organization, local organization in Aceh. So at that time, as an undergrad, so I just don't know much. Even I live in such kind of injustice, but I don't know much how these women in the ground receive kind of oppressions. So they asked me to work on educations and then an economic empowerment. So I really love it. And then soon as I engage myself with these people, I understand that the problem of women is not only about economic empowerment. Why do women were marginalized? So I become aware when I engage with different women's movement in my area, and also a lot of national women's movement who came to help, and also international women's organization, and also international organization who came at that time. But we can see who work on bringing feminist agenda and not. So, and there I can understand about feminism. Some organization come just to have their own agenda without seeing structural analysis that oppress women. Why women are being marginalized after the tsunami. And the case of Aceh is very complex because, you know, we live in 30 years of conflict. So it's not about only when you solve one problem, giving the economic empowerment to women, it doesn't solve the problem, because we
Right.
have another issues that already embedded in this society since 3 decades, and it has not been solved. And I understand that education over there is not only to provide them with the things that bringing conformity like in the school. I mean, I don't generalize the school. I don't generalize the university who are, I mean, telling us to be conformed to the curriculum that already prescribed. But what we have education within the social movement in Aceh is kind of critical consciousness. So that's mean what the feminist goal is not only to empower women to get their right, but within their right they should understand what it means to be a woman, with what it means to be justice, fair, and gender justice. So we also in Aceh have kind of like gender movement, which bringing like feminist perspective inside as our goal. Because as we know, many women movement also, not only in Aceh, perhaps nationally, that has no agenda in bringing a feminist goal in their daily works. For example, we can see like some of perhaps the governments on social women's movement, a lot of their programs are just perpetuate domestication on women's. Like for example, what we call that, might be not all. I don't try to generalize, but I have seen myself that some of government agenda, governments on women's movement doesn't try to solve that the critical issues at hand. For example, like how structure were, I mean, dominated by male in the society, and then we keep teach them something that perpetuate injustice, because we ask them to follow the things that the patriarchy that has been prescribed before. So like religious women movement also sometimes, sometimes it doesn't even have the element of consciousness in their agenda. So it does, which means that in this case, women doesn't have a freedom themselves, even they are part of that movement. So what different feminist goal is to see like social, political, and cultural roots that cause injustice that oppress women in society, like how we see like norms, religious entity, and also society that dominated by male that affect women in society to be the second class. Yeah.
Yeah. So you learned a lot from the, like women's movement, women's organization, even like in the communities, right? And the grassroots level. And also you also learn from the national level and international or global level. But the most important thing that, like that the problems of women are very contextual, right? And they are different from one communities, one cities, one province, and one country to another. Even like in Aceh province, they're different, and the form of the problems of the women, for instance, or the form of the issues or the problems, and also the patriarchal forms, right? It's also different from one place to another, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's like, you have very rich experience. You have a lot of experience working with the communities, right? Like communities in the grassroots level. I think that's very important. I think like you highlight a very good, very key, important point that we not only empower women, but women have to understand and need to understand what it means to be a woman, right? What it means, to have like women's perspective. What is their problems and how to handle, to overcome their own problems, right? So it's not enough to empower them, I mean, to have them independent, like economically independent, but I think the most important thing there, awareness, right? The
Yes.
critical thinking, way of thinking, I mean, to understand about their lives, right? Their own lives and their own existence as a woman. I think that's a very good point, Kylie. So do you have like any resistance like from women or from men in that communities, right, when you work together with them? Because I believe that you know, when we talk about like the awareness of the women's movement or gender equality, gender justice, I believe that there are a lot of people, you know, resist, right? A lot of people who disagree, for instance, about gender equality. They just don't want to women have their own rights, right? Especially when we talk about religious interpretation. I mean, like, you live in Banda Aceh, we know that there is a implementation of Islamic law, right, or Sharia law. So I think like there are a lot of resistance. I could imagine that. Like, since I have the podcast, right, 5 podcasts in Banda Aceh, so that's the religion also like shows up, right? Like
Yes.
the issues of religion, you know, how people in Aceh use or legitimize or justify religion. I mean, like to do or to perpetrate violence against women, for instance, or violence of gender-based violence. So could you tell us and share your stories about the resistance that you have while you're working together with communities? I mean, like to work together, not only empower them, but to raise awareness, right? To make them understand about themselves as a women, and then to promote gender justice and equality.
So, you know, when we work for women and we work with women, the label, always the label they bring to us. When we
Yeah.
empower women, we empower the society, but sometimes the label feminist is become a bad label in a
Yeah.
patriarchal society. I can tell about Aceh. You can't bring everywhere about when you come about gender and feminist. You directly being labeled. One time, because I remember when I conduct one of political discussions with about Sharia Islam, of course, and
Mm-hmm.
then we do it in warung kopi, a coffee shop, because you
Yeah.
know we are so close with coffee, and that's a culture.
Yeah.
But they see it
Right.
as, and then we invite like religious leaders from Sharia Islam, and then directly they against us because the conversation about gender in their perspective is cannot be discussed publicly. But again, I see a lot of resistance, but I can see that many feminist activists from Aceh, they don't give up. You know, they have their own way
Yep.
to persuade, and they work together with this ulama so that this is not kind of against one another, but we know this is, they just don't understand the concept yet.
Mm-hmm.
But for this is where feminist scholarship plays, because we have a lot, some of our activists are academicians, and then they can, what they can persuade them to tell about gender is not, to explain to them about what is gender actually, but not about what is feminist. We tell them about our goals, not to, to break up the society, but the Quran itself, for example, you know, we have to come with kind of Islamic perspective that to tell them that the gender is about working together. This is we don't confront women, men. This is about how we bring men into the center of working together, and then to fight for women. So resistance is a lot, and also, for example, if we come to village, for example, we have kind of political education that from women, that many men will against, because you know we cannot go at night, because they see that uh, nights campaign or nights, if we come at night, they will see that this is not a good agenda. you are a woman, you shouldn't come at night to just to share your story or work on agenda issue, especially during the political elections. We have many women's candidate who come at night also to campaign, but they see it as a stigma. Even from women themselves, they don't accept. Unlike men to come, they can come 24 hours and then they still accept male candidates. But for female candidate, for example, because of this traditional mindset of limited, narrow-minded in thinking about Islam, so they said that women shouldn't go out at night. So you shouldn't campaign at night. So a lot of resistance that come from men and especially from society, especially from men. So it's not easy
Yeah.
work, but it is ongoing work.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Ellie, for sharing your story with us, and thank you for keep fighting, right? Never
Yeah.
give up, because otherwise, if we need you, we need you, especially like in Aceh, right? There is a problem, I think, with the bandwidth or signal. I don't know if this has come from me or from Ellie, but we really apologize for the technical issues, for technical problems, since we really rely on the internet connection. So there is Mbak Ita Fatia Nadia here, join us tonight. And she said, I do love the conversation this afternoon with Kak Ellie Zarni. More than that, I am very happy to Kak Ellie Zarni as a feminist from Aceh. That's from Mbak Ita Fatia, Kak Ellie.
So I
So,
also thanks her a lot for her contributions to bring that people together. I mean, to bring feminist goal in Aceh. We still work together, and I hope she still, be part of this movement. To bring a better Aceh. Yeah.
yeah, Mbak Ita is one of the militant
Yeah.
feminists, very
Yes,
critical. Yeah,
and she
even to the
yeah
state. She never
yeah
stops, fighting like
yeah
you,
yeah.
just
That's why
like you.
we all inspired by her in one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, we need Baita and women or people like you. So yeah, I think like what you said, right, that there are a lot of problems, there are a lot of issues and a lot of homework, right, for women's movement,
Yes.
especially in Aceh, because there's a normalization and naturalization, right, of violence against women, and they're not aware. Sometimes they're not aware that there's a violence, or because they think that that's part of their daily life, so they just receive, they
Yeah.
just accept that
Yeah.
as a destiny, as a quadrat of women, right,
Yeah.
as a normal, as a natural, right. So what you have done, I think that's very important as a feminist, right? Both a feminist activist and feminist scholars, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
to work with the communities, and also to write, to produce knowledge, right, and then distribute the knowledge, because I think that's one of the weaknesses that we
Yes.
have in Indonesia. We don't
Yeah.
write, we don't
Yes.
document a lot.
Yes.
So even like, I think this is like the verbal like knowledge like this. I mean, like we later we will have time to write it later, right? But now we
Yes.
having the conversation like this. I mean, like to really get the local knowledge, right, about feminist movement or women's movement, not only at the national level or in Jakarta, but also from, like many regions and remote areas in Indonesia. As I said earlier, that we are very rich, right? And the stories or local movements or women's movement that has not been documented yet, has not been, dig deeper yet, right? By the feminist movement, try to be hand in hand, not only in the national level, but also like in the local level. So you mentioned about the men's, right? I mean, like, I think that's one of the key issues, also key strategies that we could, do. I mean, like, to involve men, right? Not only women. I mean, to work together, right, in the communities. So because, like, not only women are vulnerable or become target of the violence, of the
Violence. Yeah.
discrimination, right? Yeah, but also men, right? But also boys, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question to you is, so what are the connections or the relations between feminism and women's movements, Ellie? Can there be a women's movement without feminism? Or if
Yes.
so, would you please give us an example, right? Is feminism the only framework for women's movement? Or how do you connect feminism and women's movements? Are they related, or are they like separate entities and separate, like movement? What do you think about that?
So like I said before, they are all connected, but not all, in my opinions, not all women's movement carries a feminist framework. Sometimes they work with their own, goal. Sometimes they work with feminist. What I mean is feminist movement. So women's movement can be part of feminist movement, but not all women's movement are part of feminist movement. So yeah, so like I said, many women's movement, they carry their own agenda without seeing like social oppressions undergone women's, but they only fought for the rights of women's, like religious women's movement. They don't go
Yep.
deeply into seeing the root cause that cause oppressions,
Right.
because they don't see this is kind of a problem, because they don't want to tell very deep truth, because they don't want to talk about truth. Even within
Yeah.
feminists themselves, I have found that progressive feminists and conservative feminists, but they still consider themselves as feminists. If we go deeply into feminism, what it means to be a feminist, we have to be very clear. It is a mindset. We know that, for example, like many norms or religious understand norms or religious verse, like from our Quran or something, but they are hesitant to talk about it as a way, as a part of creating kind of oppression on women. So I can see that not all women's movement have their framework, feminist framework,
Right.
but I can see that many women movement carried a feminist perspective in their way of working. So for example, like my organization, I can tell that, my local organization, I can see that, for example, we don't want to just give these women's something, but they have to know where is this from and how they can find it after we leave. It's kind part of political consciousness. We have to put political consciousness in them, so that when we are not part of them, they can stand for themselves.
Hello? I think I don't know, the connection is sometimes it's like, like there's a disconnect sometimes. So yeah, I don't know, it's my connection or Ellie's connection. But I can get your point. Yeah, that there are a lot of women's movement, right, in Indonesia, but not all of the women's movement, they have like feminist perspective, right?
Yes, yeah.
Even that becomes contestation. I think like feminism, right, becomes contestation to many women's groups, because even the conservative groups, like you said, and even the like the fundamentalist groups, they also can use the feminist movement or feminism with different way, right? They use it, okay, I'm a feminist, right? But they claim as a feminist, they use the feminist framework, the feminism framework, but they have different goals or different aims, they have different strategy, so they actually contradict each other, like with the feminist perspective. So I think that's the truth. Yeah, currently nowadays, there are a lot of people use like utilize, or I don't know, it's like manipulate quote unquote like feminist perspective or feminist movement or feminist label but they actually do not have like really feminist or real feminist perspective, and they do not have like critical way of thinking, open-mindedness, and they're not critical to the structure, to the state, for instance, right, to the system of the women's oppression, for instance, and they don't want to end it. And in fact, they really actually they agree with that women's oppression, and they just like and it becomes natural again. So I think yes, that's the truth. Thank you so much, Ellie. So if that's so, what are the advantages and the disadvantages, or the weaknesses and the strengths of using feminism as a framework of women's movements, Ellie?
So I mean, if we use feminism as a framework, so we can go to deeper problems, that from that we can create also the interventions that benefited and bringing gender justice. But if we don't use this kind of feminist framework, if we want to work with women, that's why women's organization really need to work with feminist activists in order their intervention is really meaningful to the society. Because if they work alone, I mean, what I said alone is this women's organization who doesn't have feminist thinking, feminist goal in their minds, they couldn't, I mean, analyze the social structure, what perpetuate injustice in the society. So they are not only focusing on the program, but how this program, who brings this program, what is the goal of this program, who benefit from it, and who being left behind. Because the agenda is of feminists is to see all women's from different, to see all being from different level, class, everything's like including, I mean, different sexual orientation. Because what we don't want to see here is those who don't have left behind, because they are part of the society. So that's why this is the weakness, the advantage, because when we do use a feminist framework, we do try to create a policy, because our goal is a policy that can be a control to can become a future control for bringing, I mean, bringing gender justice to the state, to the institution, government, even the social society. Otherwise, we are failed to do our empowerments if we don't do gender justice. But there's still a problems, you know. Some of women's organizations, they are fearful to engage these women. Even the governments, they are resistant to feminists, because in their own way, they're thinking feminist is a bad label, is a westernized, and this is kind of, you know, it's like a sin to be feminist in somehow. But it is maybe because they do not understand exactly the deep meaning of feminism. Of course, the goal of feminists is to prioritize is a woman, but they have different goals to bring this society gender justice as the upfront of their work. So that's why what I like, I mean, maybe maybe Mbak Nadia, when she was in Aceh, also, I mean, you know, this gender working group also, you know, using like a lot of feminist framework to create program for intervention after tsunami and after peace. Even though this is they have a lot of resistance from religious leaders and community, because, and also from community, especially at that time, is very difficult when men come back from the combats. They take the rule against to dominate women. You know, other issues are emerge, because when they analyze, they use feminist perspective, feminist framework in their way of analyzing problems. They could create justice not only for women, but also for all society. But because at that time they see that even intervention from government, BRR, and also from international organization doesn't really touch the needs of women, the needs of gender interests of women. That's why using feminist framework can reduce inequality and produce a better policy that embrace everybody, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie. So Farid said, my current observation told me some important progress in Aceh feminist movements.
Yes.
Kak Nirma Hashim, hello Mbak Ira and Ellie. Ada
Hello.
Dina Sabina, keren Ellie. Oh, that's your friend. Ika
Yes.
Carlina, awesome Mbak Ellie.
Oh,
Mbak Ita
yes,
said,
she's my friend.
this is very clear your position and thinking, Kak Ellie Zarni, bravo. Mbak Ita said, I'm really happy with your opinion. And
Thank
hello,
you.
Mbak Ida. Welcome to our special event live on Instagram today. This is like the last day of the 16 days of campaign or activism, anti-gender-based violence, and also Human Rights Day. So we're celebrating by having discussion like this. Hopefully, we also could be a way of producing local knowledge, yeah, Kaeli, contributing to something, at least contributing to having a discussion like this, and then to think about the issues that we have as a feminist movement in Indonesia. So yeah, I think like you said that about the you know, like the label, you know, that the feminists have, like the stigma, right? The bad label, the negative way of thinking, and the stigma that the society attach, right, to feminists, to us, right?
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, like, especially in Aceh, because you live in Aceh, I think it's not very easy for you, I mean, like, to move. But still, I mean, like, it's like Sabah Mahmud mentioned about the agency, right? That we have an agency, even though that we are oppressed by the, you know, the system, by the, for instance, the conservative or fundamentalist group. But still, I mean, like, we have the capacity, the agentive capacity to move, right? To make something, to make changes. Like in Aceh, for instance, right? They are, like Farid said in the chat, they are very progressive, yes, right? And so I think, like, maybe people outside Aceh, or maybe like people in other countries, right, in more developed countries, they would think that, oh, that Acehese women, they are oppressed by the system, by Sharia law. But that's not true. If you come to Aceh, you're going to see that they're very progressive, right? Yes, and the women's movement there, they're very strong, and they really do something, right? They do a lot of things for the communities, for the women's movements, I mean, to end the gender-based violence. Even now, they try to revise the Kanun, right? The local regulation, right? I think that's very progressive, you know, like, way. And there's very like improvement in Aceh itself in terms of the feminist or women's movement. So so you said about the stigma, right, attached to the feminist as a liberal, you know, like non-Western feminist or feminist movement. Feminism comes from Western, right? Many people still use that, not only men but also women. They don't believe in feminism, and they thought that feminism is something really bad, to teach people to be liberal, to teach people to be like a taste, or not having like God or religion, and to be want to have like the higher position than men, so etc. etc. So do you think we as a non-Western society can approach and apply feminism for social movements, especially for women's movement? And do you think that we need to adapt and adjust feminism to be relevant and compatible with our national identity? Like as in Indonesia, because we have like different cultures, even like not only Indonesia, I think, like as Acehese feminism, do you believe that there's like Acehese feminism, Medanese feminism, Cirebonese feminism, you know, like Jakartanese feminism, or do you believe in the global feminism or national feminism? right? And how does it look like? I mean, to be like a Chinese feminism, if you believe, if you agree, like to have local feminism rather than national feminism, right? Because this is one of the critiques that we have in the second wave feminism, first wave feminism, right? And second wave feminism, that it's too Western centric, right? It centers to Western and in the developed country, right? Not in the developing or third world country or global South. There is no class, for instance, class issues in the first wave feminism, even in the second wave feminism. So how do you see, you know, like local feminism and global feminism? And what's your position on that?
You know, as my position is as a feminist, I can be, I mean, you know, a global feminist, and I'm also part of local feminists because, you know, I believe that every culture they have their own way of working things, so their own way also of knowing things that we also have to appreciate. For Aceh people, for example, you know, like they have adopt like what Islamic feminism in a way that using Quran because they become Islam has been part of their identity. But what kind of interpretation that of Islam that carry the feminist perspective? I mean, like for example, Amina Wadud, she said that you can't separate us with Islam because that's part of our identity. But the way we behave, the way of our agency, we base it on Islamic verse. But what kind of Islamic verse? It is from Quran, but within the progressive interpretations that what we want to be, I mean, the feminists Islamic feminists have. And also, I mean, actually, we cannot generalize the way of feminism work in different culture because they have their own way of thinking and working. For example, like in Indonesia, for example, we have the oppression what we experience is different from global. But what we can do is not to have like kind of dichotomy between Western feminists and local feminists, but how we can do is to bring this local feminists into global feminists, into transnational feminists, so that we can have local knowledge as a part of feminist itself, not to bring that this is a local, it's kind of doesn't work together. I used to think that okay, this is my local feminism, but my job is to bring this kind of local feminism into the feminist framework that carry also the knowledge from my local. So for example, like we don't do, I mean, feminism like in the West, but we don't do feminism in the like in the West, but we have our own way of doing here. For example, in uh, village, women do have their own group to show their agency that might be become oppression in some people when they see. But for these people, it is part of their own actualization to show their own feminism.
Yeah, yeah, I think yes, it is. It is very critical. I mean, like to understand our position as women from the global South, that we have our own issues, that we have our own
Yes.
problems, right? That is different, of course, from like women in more developed countries, the global North, right? And I think, like you said, I mean, it is very important and vital. I mean, to bring our local knowledge, our local perspective, local women's movement, and local issues, right? And then what we have, what we already have done so far. I mean, to international level, to the global level. So when we go to America, for instance, the USA, or in other countries, I think we need to tell them that
Yes.
Indonesia, for instance, is not, you know, like not all of women in Indonesia are oppressed, especially in
Yes.
Aceh, because
Yeah.
they're wearing
Yeah.
hijab, right?
Yeah.
Because that's like the way that not all Western think that way, but I think like the majority, even the
Yes.
professors, right, in the university in United States of America, they think that well, women in the global South, they're oppressed, especially if we live in the under the Islamic law, so we cannot do anything, and then they need to save us,
Yes.
right? And then we are not empowered, so we need to be empowered. But because they haven't met the women's, like the local women's movement, they haven't talked to them, so they don't know the problems, right? They don't know what's going on in the local communities and the women's perspective. So they thought that there is no agency, right? Like in women like us in the global South. I think that's you raised a very good point, Kylie. Yeah, you want to add something?
Yes, that's why, sometimes in the forums also I against that they generalize Muslim because they see Muslim like in the Middle East, and we have to, because we are not the same, because even Muslim was practiced differently in different part of the world. I mean, like for when they said, oh, all Muslim are, because this is kind of bringing their perspective to see, like in the Middle East, for example, the oppression exists. Even in Aceh, the oppression exists, but we don't, we have agency to fight against it. And we have different, even our own history has taught us that a lot of feminist leaders at that time, perhaps they don't know the term feminist. Like, for example, we do have the first admiral in the world is from Aceh. She is a Muslim. She is a woman. She is a Muslim, Malahayati, and she became the first admiral in the world. And also we have those women who fought for colonization. And then we have Kartini, who used her writing, to against oppression. We just don't sit. We just don't sit, accept that kind of oppression. We work something in our way. That's why, like you said, it not been documented a lot. It not been, publicized a lot. That's why our job is to document and share their stories. And part of myself as a feminist, as feminist from Indonesia, that's to tell my story, my people's stories. Is kind of also an effort, to bring our stories into, public's talk, maybe.
Yeah, I mean the global and the public and the global
Yes,
level.
yeah.
I think this is one of the post-colonial critique, right? Like
Yes,
feminist post-colonial critique that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is very crucial, very important. I mean, like to notice that we have our own agenda, our own issues, our own way to fight, right? And then we're not permissive and passive and silent victims, right? Because we have agency, like you said. But now I'm wondering, how do you see feminist movements currently in Indonesia, right? Like in recent time, do you see any good news and big hopes, or bad news or no hopes? How do you see it?
I always says a hope. Even there is a struggle, because with the emerging of a lot of fundamentalism, if fundamentalism is not only in religions, it's a lot in governments, in education, so it's kind of a big challenge. But I hope that feminists in Indonesia doesn't give up, to fight for our goals. So we have a hope. We work hard, but there is not much what state doesn't accept. It's hard if because we fought for this feminist goal for long times, but we can't work this alone if the state doesn't have kind of willingness to work together, because it is, to bring a justice is not a feminist work only, but the state who are responsible also for bringing this gender justice into every dimensions of our life. But if I see that feminist movement are growing, but still, is that fundamentalism also emerged in many institutions, in government, in non-governments, in religious institution, which become a challenge for this feminists to prolong their work. So yeah, I see a hope, but when I see it's just the same person, who work continuously, just the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
person. It's kind of STEM activists who work since before until now, the same
yeah.
person. Not many changings. That's the problems. I don't know where's the challenge. When I see,
Yeah.
they sometimes get tired.
Mm.
Because not many people want to welcome this feminist agenda,
Mm.
especially the government itself, who are very fundamentalist in accepting kind of what we call kind of advice, and also kind of dialogues,
Mm.
and added with this kind of fundamentalism from religions. It's a kind of a lot of challenge, but we as a feminist continue to work and to embrace this feminist perspective in different organizations. But still, it's just the same people. We
Mm.
have very small in number still.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a challenge or the obstacle that the women's movement or feminist movement face, like in terms of the leadership, right? In terms of
Yes.
the people, right, who want to involve, right, want to get involved and engage in the feminist movement? Because, like, I don't know, what do you think about the young generation? I mean, do you think that the young generation are not interested enough in the feminist movement, or they just like, especially like millennial, right? Like people are labeled as millennial. I know, because like you said, there are not many changes in terms of the resource person, the persons who are really interested in feminist movement and to keep fighting, right, to stop gender-based violence. And then it's still the same person from, I don't know how long, like 10 or 20 years, right?
Yeah.
So what is actually the problem and challenges, Kayani? Can you just like just tell us a brief, very brief about that? Like what are the challenges that we're facing?
Okay, this is, in my opinions, also, okay, as an educator, I see that educational institution plays a big role in maintaining patriarchy, where they should be the one who produce knowledge. But even in terms of curriculum itself, and even like teachers, professors, and personnel staff and leaders, they don't have feminist thinking. I mean, even they don't have a kind of a way that even they still embrace a lot of traditional way or traditional leaderships, where men should lead and women should be the under this male leadership. For example, in the school, even the extracurricular things, it is kind of program that doesn't create critical thinking in students, I mean in boys or girls, but in kind of perpetuate what patriarchy in society that already prescribed. You have to be this one. If you are man, you have to be this one. If you are girl, then you have to get married, and then follow your parents, and also you can't be. They don't put kind of awareness that women have the same opportunity, girls have the same opportunity as a male in terms of pursuing their dreams. So one of the challenge is, even the research center, they do not interested at all much on thing of feminism, on issues of gender. See how much money do we have, and what they are producing is kind of creating robotics human being. When you robotic human being, when you they only aware about, do you need technology, math, everything, but social think about feminist thing, they are not interested. Even in our scholarship, see, in government scholarship, when you apply for that government scholarship, this kind what feminist gender is not a unique subject for them to be, I mean, to be one of the priority of the state. But yeah, so this kind of the leadership is still play the role. So that's why, when recruiting also, you ask them, not how do you lead? Can you read this verse? Can you read this one? The main for recruitment is not about your leadership, but about what you can do to become like how you can maintain this kind of status quo, because otherwise once you challenge, you rebel, you become labeled, oh, you are not a good woman, you cannot be leaders because you are so much emotional. It's become also a challenge for women's leadership, especially who have feminist perspective. When they want to elect themselves, they consider, when they speak up, oh, you can't lead us because you are emotional, you are aggressive. Aggressive emotional is become a bad level for women, but they never question for men. Like, for example, in the political election, for example, people always question about the quality of women, very quality of men. Okay, do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there was like there was disconnect before, but now I can hear you.
Okay.
Clearly.
So
I mean, like many see that feminist activists, like from NGOs and feminist academicians, like feminist activists and feminist scholars, right? They don't really work together very often. Like I said earlier, like in the introduction. So what do you think, right? That's first. That's my question, the first question. And the second part is, do you also see the impacts of different focuses and agendas between feminist activism that focuses on advocacy only and community organizations and community development, and feminist scholarship that focuses on and concerning with producing academic knowledge as an obstacle in making collaboration? What do you think about that, Ellie?
That's why we cannot, in fact, but I will answer your first question. Yes, they don't work together oftenly. I agree. But the second one, that's why we need like kind of feminist scholars, feminist scholar that can integrate both advocacy into the academic work. That way we can like produce knowledge by having not because our culture doesn't consider knowledge legitimate knowledge unless it is published. But actually, we have a lot of knowledge from community that organized by feminist activists that never been part of academic work, because sometimes the academics, they are trained not to be connected. It is hard to be academician. Actually, most of them work in isolated work. It should be it should be a collaborative work. Because if we work in isolation, we diminish the knowledge from the ground that has so many values that we forget to bring this into the center of learning. So what they can do actually, don't become separate ones. Feminist scholar can engage feminist activists to work together, for example, through research center. But sometimes the wrong idea also, academicians only see these feminist activists as a data. not part of this kind of not part of
movement.
this movement, as how we can engage together to bring this kind of goal together in our own terms. For example, like university can engage like activist work and organization work as a collaborative work to produce research together, to produce paper together, book together. I mean, don't see them as, only object of kind of object,
As
but
an
part.
instrumental. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, because many researchers I have seen that they come to the village or something, take that kind of what take that kind of experience, they analyze through their own lenses, and then they produce. They
Yep.
forget even to thank that this is knowledge come from this one. Who get benefited from this work and who doesn't get. So if she is a feminist scholar, this is a part of collaborations. This one, like for example, your research participant need to be liberated, and also you also need to be liberated by having this engagement. So for example, what is this is the goal is to bring like for example to bring a kind of what is the agenda of women's movement, what is the agenda of feminist movement. Let's collaborate. You have what you have data, and perhaps this one have the way of analyzing this data, but how they can engage together and bringing this person uh, into the scholarships, not only taking advantage from this person and then left them uh, alone, kind of this kind.
Yeah. I think like there is like a dichotomy, right, in our
Yes, yes,
society that
yeah,
feminist activists, they are not part of the producing knowledge,
yeah,
right? Meanwhile, in university, the academician or like scholars, or they sometimes they label themselves, they claim as a feminist, feminist scholars, right? They produce knowledge, right? And they don't work together. That's why like they could also work, and then they could use the data, but they have to work together, right? The data, because data is very important for the advocacy, right? Without the data, like, well, the scholars cannot write anything, right? Without the research, I mean, like to work together with the feminist activists and then the local communities, they can't write anything. But I think like it should be beneficial, right? I mean, like for the communities, and also for the feminist activists, because as we know that there are a lot of trainings, right, has been conducted by the feminist activists, right, for the people who work in the community levels and the work for the advocacy, right, and then work with real people in the communities, right, in the grassroots level, unlike the university work, in the campus or universities only. So I think they make training, like in the training, reproductive and sexual health and rights education, right? They have a lot of practice, a lot of programs that they conducted. So it is much better if they could document, they can write together, like produce knowledge, right? They could produce knowledge, like both of them, not only, like feminist scholars. I think that's like one of the weaknesses that we still have.
Distrust, a lot of distrust. Because sometimes these academicians are being kind of little bit exclusive, and also activists also exclusive. So it's hard, when we put ego up, it's hard to come together. In fact, we work on the same issues. Why don't we collaborate? But this kind of distrust still play very important role in this kind of scholarship to happen. So like you said, a lot of trainings, being conducted by feminist scholars, by feminist activists or women's organization, who can, if this feminist scholar can engage this kind of training to be part of curriculum in their university, or become part of, for example, invite them to be a resource person in their class, instead of taking from the book that written that very different context from us. Why don't we invite local person who have been
Yeah.
part of this
Yeah.
grassroots movement, who can tell
Yeah.
their story, that can become, a knowledge production for all of us. Too often, we don't see that women's experience as a knowledge. We are too tight with the knowledge that only focusing on the books. But how we can bring this kind theory and experience, and then combine it to see what have been
Right.
done well, and then what kind of evaluation, what need to be done, and then see them as a resource person.
Right.
And also,
Yeah.
these activists also invite them to to work together in terms of researching women's in society.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like we could have like it's also to produce theories, right? New
Yes.
theories,
Yes.
or revise old theories, right? It doesn't matter as long as we could like work together. I think we also could utilize or maximize like the theories to like practicing theories or to theorize practices, right?
Yes.
Like both, yeah, from the universities or from the grassroots levels or from the communities. Like you said, so if the scholars, the feminist scholars come to grassroots level, to the communities, right, and then just like collect the data, and then they use that data. So that's the same position, the same thing happens like from colonial perspective, right?
Yes.
From like Western scholars come to our villages, right, to our country, and then they just collect the data, they just support the community, and then they left them. Nothing like beneficial. Yes, they left them. So that's happening, right? Like you said before. So my next question. So what is the my next question is like our universities or higher education, right, level play a very important role, a key role in knowledge production and distribution on gender, feminism, women's rights, sexuality, etc. Right? And they have many study and research center. And some universities like teach anthropology of gender, for instance, right, or gender and women's studies. So how many resources, like how much knowledge from academia contribute to feminist scholarship, and how much resources, both human and non-human resources, do our universities have to study gender and feminism? What do you think?
I think we still have, like you said, we are too much being bonded with knowledge from the from the books, or we too much from like scholars. We forget to see that local knowledge is also part of learning, parts of knowledge, like you said earlier. Otherwise we never come together if we doesn't engage this kind of entities. For example, like anthropology of gender, we do need to study, both perspective. Like, okay, this is from the book that's written in different contexts. Let's see how this framework works in our context. And we come to meet like feminist activists in the organization, invite them and to talk how this feminism work in certain context. So when we are connected, thinking, when we connect theory into the real world, it is easy to be understood, and then we can learn better. So like I said, for example, like I said, if we want to mainstream this kind of feminist thinking into organization, from the recruitment itself, when we recruit professors or also they have to have kind of the core knowledge about gender justice, because to and then be makes time, if like it's come back again to leadership, willingness or not willing to have this kind gender as a part, because we have a lot of gender studies, but still, you know, a lot of that's university is still very fundamentalist in term, it's not free. So if we have right person who sit, and then they have power to do something in that, perhaps even in curriculum of gender, I mean, can be a core of its organizations and its university as a basis, a foundational understanding before they can move to their own subject. Because, you know, when you understand about gender of anthropology or gender or something, if when you choose math, you can analyze who are doing this math, and then who are being represented in very, I mean, who are leaders in this math. Perhaps women are also still very minority in that subject. So, so what I tell here is, you know, university plays an important role in giving trainings. I mean, trainings is, again, they don't want to engage outsiders. You see, activists, you know, feminist activists as an outsiders. They don't see that it's kind of real knowledge. But the good things that many also feminist activists who become feminist scholars who work in that university, that's their role can play very good part in bringing feminism into higher education, for example. Because if we wait for top for upper what top leaders who are mostly male who doesn't have feminist perspective, is going to be very long journey, because we can see who are leaders in higher education, they are themselves have, still not doesn't have feminist perspective. They don't understand gender, and then when sexual violence, gender-based violence comes into in the university, happen in the university, they still hide this kind of issues, you know, because they don't want to be, they said, we don't want our organization or our education to be stigmatized by having a lot of, you know, because so my problem is not many professor academicians who have gender's perspective. That's why we are still very long way to go, you know. That's why I urge also many feminists also, they can take part in academicians also, you know. They are not, they doesn't need necessarily to work alone, but how they can also take academician as one of their professional career perhaps in future, because we do need kind of activist scholars who have a feminist perspective. Otherwise we will work alone and not many people interested, and then we should fight for leadership. Otherwise, if the same leader sits, you know, we are, because so many women's leader also doesn't have even feminist perspective, and then there's organizations doesn't move, and then even the women's but in Aceh I do have a lot of I remember a lot of women center in organization, they work with feminist activists to produce some kind of knowledge. But still, again, it is between them only and feminist activists, but not to the whole to the whole higher university. Because when they present into the higher higher education, they still resistant to what they are doing. You know, they don't see this research center as impressive as technology center, because, you know, we're still leveling knowledge. We don't see social knowledge as most as the same important as kind of math or something, you know. We're still leveling kind of knowledge.
Yeah, because there are, like you said, yeah, there are a lot of like you know, like knowledge production about women, for instance, but it doesn't give like impact, right? impact for the policy changes, for instance, and an impact for the women themselves. I mean, so it's like the knowledge, but it's not based on women's needs, right?
Yes,
women's strategy to change the patriarchal society, for instance, to change the mindset, right? Because like academicians, they producing knowledge, but for what? For the career, right? I mean, to get like the promotion, right, of the grade, or to be the professor as early as possible, or for what, right? For humanity, for women's, right, for the women's movement agendas, for instance, right? For the gender justice, like you said, gender equality, gender justice, because gender justice is not about justice for women, but it's justice for societies, like you said, right? Like for everybody, right? And then they don't think about structure, system, about like the states, for instance. So they just like, as long as they can write, and they writing the article published, to get published in the journal, and then they're happy. So it's like nothing get an impact.
They're afraid to question the state. I mean, many of them are afraid to question the states.
So it's like currently we have the Perman, right? Perman Dikbud and Respect number 30, 2021, about the sexual violence, right? And then it is very ironic, right? Embarrassing. Ironic. This is anomaly. Why? Because the institution, the higher institution like universities, they are supposed to be clear, right? Supposed to be sterile from any kind of violence. I mean, like, moreover, this is sexual violence. It's happening in campus and universities, right? I think that the role of the universities also, they can not only producing knowledge, but also they have to like try to change the mindset and perspective.
I have.
Awareness. So I think I agree with you on that. But I still have some questions about what is the most important contribution of knowledge production from both NGOs and universities for women's rights and gender equality movement in Indonesia? And how can we strengthen research for advocacy or advocacy based on research, Ellie?
Like for example, we have like first collaborations, bringing all stakeholders, for example, like from women's movement, academicians, and religious leaders to come together and create the policy. Because when we have the policy, we have the control. And then because many women's movement also have research published, report, we call it reports, and also we show the fact, this is documents, and then make some events that disseminates this research finding to the communities, so that the state understand that some issues and some hopes needs to happen. So like you said, we have to have more documentation on that. Because so I have seen like after the tsunami in Aceh, when it come to peace, these women activists whom some of them consider themselves feminists can when they see kind of oppression, inequality in distributing the wealth or something, the intervention, tsunami intervention, they come together, they create research, and then they document women's stories, who stay in the field, who stay in the barrack, and who are the victims, and they bring this kind of report, this kind of stories, they as a testimony to provoke policy. They come together. They engage in university resource center, and then they come to meet, like for example, policymakers. We have data here, so what should we do? We don't come without data. We just not only talking, but this is the voices of movement. We could bring them as a testimony they can use. So research should be part of advocacy. Advocacy it interlink, because it's kind of like praxis. We see things and then we X, and then what works, and then we X again.
Right.
We see, because it is changing. It is changing dynamics. So what is important is a collaborations. So I see a lot of collaboration, like from feminist Chinese movement during after peace, because they see that's a problematic. We have to come together. We have to bring data, and then we play our own work with academician, with research center at that time, to produce knowledge from women's victim as legitimate data to propose for policy changing at that time.
Yeah.
And then I should be what I should be thankful for these feminists. For example, they have produced kanun on women's and protections, who talk about more, all women's issues. And with this kanun, we have control. But still, again, the challenge is not being implemented well again. But at least we have kind of policy agenda. We force them that we have to be part of policy makers, like kind of like. Yeah, the issue is collaborative.
Right. Yeah, because the issue, the problems of gender inequality and gender injustice is about the structural problems, right? It's the systemic. Systemic means it's not only massive, but it's structural, right? There's a structure, there's a system, and then we cannot combat by ourselves. We need policies, right?
Yes.
Like gender-friendly policy, gender mainstreaming policies.
Yes.
It's nothing we can do if the state just like always absent. Right? I mean, the state, there is no political will from the state, like you said earlier. I think, like, I mean, to be critical to the state, and in like how our research and our writings, is also they give impact, right, for women by changing policies, for instance, or like the training or the articles they publish also give the impact. I mean, like, at least, I mean, they think about women's issues, right, and how to overcome, to handle those issues. Ka Ellie, are you there? Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. Ka Ellie, well, I'm really interested in your dissertation, right? I mean, your dissertation about gender conflict and peace and the role of feminist popular education during and after the conflict in Aceh, Indonesia, right? Could you please tell us, like in short, in brief, right, like why you were interested in writing that topic for your dissertation, and what are your findings? What are your key messages that you want to resonate and deliver to feminist movement or some feminist activists and feminist scholars in Indonesia by writing that dissertation? Please.
So I come back to your first point. The important thing is we don't document, right? So I bond myself together from feminist activists into feminist scholar. So it comes together.
Right.
So when I write my dissertations, I think a lot, because it takes some time to finish this work, because I don't want to write something that don't impact my women's, because I become who I am today because of this journey, right? So I come from the place where conflict has been part of my life, and also I have seen that a lot of feminist activists have worked to help women, not only in a peaceful situation, but also in conflict. In conflict, you can't even talk about something because you are going to be threatened. Your life is going to be threatened.
Right.
But I remember myself. I still have, because this dissertation also part of bringing my identity, strengthening my identity. So I see these women, unlike many men who cannot be in the village at that time, these feminist activists work together to bring kind of women's need during the conflict. For example, when someone experiences gender-based violence, and then sexual violence, rapes, sexual tortures, and everything, men doesn't come to the village to help. These feminists come to help. and they cannot do it openly because no hospital, no doctors, and no I mean public health facilities, because you will be stigmatized as military if you help these women. If you sometimes, because women's become of difficult time, but this women feminist has come into very calm ways and quiet ways to the village to help other women, to take them to bring to the hospital by threatening their life. But we never documented this as a very important knowledge of local feminism during the war. And then again, they have used, it is not easy to come to the village at that time. I myself a victim of conflict. They come with economic empowerment, right? Because you can't come to Aceh, you said, I'm going to tell them about gender issues, I'm going to this one. No, you can't, because your life is going to be threatened. So how they do is, they have their feminist agenda delivered. They bring kind of humanitarian agenda. They bring foods for the community. They bring food for the IDPs. And then through this small group, person to person, they deliver kind of consciousness. It is not an organized feminist movement, but because the condition, the context at that time, it has to be forced to deliver some of information through small groups, person to person. For example, they said, oh, military will come at this time, please don't do this, don't do this. And try to inform other villagers. And then how you can, for example, while they talk about human rights, because you can't talk about human rights at that time, because you will be labeled as a supporter of GAM or supporter of military. And then what they do, this is very interesting strategy. What they do is they collaborate, they come together in the village, and they talk about, for example, goat empowerment or chicken empowerment. But within this kind of conversation, they tell them, if you find something, like for example, military what force you or something, do please document this, take some picture, or do this and report to this one. Report. This is part of consciousness rising, not publicly documented. But also this feminist activist doesn't fight only in this local village, but they also fight into internationals, about this women's gender violence during conflict. And so, and also one interesting also that I found, there are organizations, feminist activists who provide like healings, when the formal healing strategy, you can come at that time to bring formal healing, what you call it as a healing strategy when you come to, but you can't talk with the what we call this, what the victims of sexual violence about something very deep. They have to, when the first time they come, they don't accept, because they can't see outsider, they don't believe outsider, especially after being raped. But the power of deep listening of these feminist activists, they finally open to them, and then they are the one who help them. There is no state doesn't involve at that time. And also, the male
like
absent.
The psychosocial, right?
Yes.
Psychosocial
So yeah, psychological and social things. So it's kind of person to person healing strategy. They come, they listen. First time, they don't accept these women, but they come to another time. Once trust was built, they inform another victim, another rape victim, for example, hey, if she come again, please trust her. She will take us to hospital. When I remember that story, it's kind of hard to tell.
Right.
But I see a lot of hopes from these Chinese women. They don't not only grow in the peace time, but they survive. Even these women villager also survive within the times of conflict, where life is so threatening. So I just document this kind of strategy, and I compare it how feminist strategy changed over time after
Right.
the peace. And then, like you said, to contribute to feminist understanding, to see this local feminist to bring to the international agenda. So this kind of like sharing the stories from my people as a
Right.
legitimate knowledge to
Right.
be contribute to
Right.
feminist theory.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Yeah.
things.
So listening to the stories, the narrative of women, right?
Yes,
Like
yeah,
you listen to the feminist stories, right? But
yeah,
you also listen to the local people, local
yes,
women who also
yeah,
have different stories. They have
yes,
trauma, right? Long
yes,
trauma, and they need like counseling,
yeah.
psychosocial um, counseling, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
that's like, yes, it is very crucial. It's very important to give voices, right? Give
Mm-hmm.
spaces and rooms for women, different
Mm-hmm.
women and unique, because women have different experiences,
Yes,
right? And
yes,
unique experiences. That's why I think like what you have done is it's part of the feminist ethnography, right?
yeah,
Feminist ethnography, because it's
yeah,
about we have different subjectivities, right? Women
yes,
have
yes.
different experiences, different feelings, different perspectives, right? And then to listen to their stories, that's part of the feminist
Yes,
ethnography,
yeah,
right? And
yeah, yeah,
anthropology. So
yeah.
that's, yeah, not only um, you listen to them, but you said that you also listen to the feminists, local
Yes,
feminists, right?
yes, yeah,
So that's
yeah.
very interesting, Kaeli. Thank you for sharing with us. So if you guys are interested in reading Kaeli's dissertation, so you could reach out to me or to Let's Talk, so we could share with the Kaeli's permission. Of course, we're gonna share this dissertation with you, because the dissertation is like 500 pages, more than 500 pages.
They
It's so
cut
long, but it's
already.
very good. Yeah. Oh, you okay? Good.
At first, it's
Okay.
700 pages. That's why I take like
Oh,
eight years
okay.
to finish.
It becomes 500 and something pages. Yeah. Okay, Kaeli. We're almost at the end of the our conversation. It's still like very interesting to talk to you. Um, well, my next question: how do you attract like like new students, for instance, right? The not only for bachelor degree but also MA to write their thesis, for doctoral degree. I mean, doctoral students to write their dissertations, right, about works on gender, sexuality, feminism, for instance. How to urge them to work on that issues and work on that issues. Do you have any ideas or thoughts how to attract students in like of higher education institution in Indonesia to get like stronger engagement or like real participation and knowledge, like producing knowledge on gender, sexuality, feminism?
Yeah, that's very great questions. Perhaps maybe it is between their mentors and the student itself. I mean, first introduce them to their own experience, so to ask them to see their daily encounter. Do they see injustice, or they are? I mean, they are. They don't see. Sometimes we can't ask people to write something if they don't aware about it. So
Right,
first of
right.
all is part of the awareness. I mean,
Mm,
give them something that really resonate in their own daily life. For example, start from their family. How you
mm,
see that your family operates. What is your parents do, and then how your brother, and then how is if you
right.
didn't find this, and then go to the
Mm,
village. See, go like kind of makes for small projects, small research by telling them
mm,
to go to village to document, like sexual violence and talk to the people, to the woman. But it can't be very open because we need kind of a concern to do that. But the most important thing is first to make them critical aware of what injustice is happening.
yeah.
I mean, not only about women's, not only about, but gender-based violence can be very different forms. I mean, they can they can identify what types of gender violence they see in daily life, and then how they can think to be part of a problem solver, might be through writing. Tell them through
Right.
writing you have done something, you produce knowledge, you disseminate your findings, and then this is you will see this your finding is going to impact a lot of public and community. Perhaps you don't change much mindset, but at least if one person have read your, maybe it can change someone, you know. It's a big
Yeah.
contribution if you are aware of this
Yeah.
gender-based violence. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. You mentioned earlier about the challenges that the feminist movements face or confronted, right? Like from the state and the society, and from the state or the, for instance, no political will, like,
Mm-hmm.
or there's a conflict of interest, or there's a patriarchal or masculine perspective, right? There is no gender perspective, for instance. So in the society also that's the same. There's a normalization and naturalization of discrimination against women, put women as an object, or like object of sex, for instance. They do not have any authority of themselves, of their bodies, of their mind, right? And then changing the perspective and mindset, that's very important as part of I think the main agendas, right? But other than that, do you see any other like challenges that we are facing in terms of the state or the society, and what are the main challenges and obstacles of feminist knowledge production in Indonesia? And the last question, what are the most fundamental agendas needed to be prioritized to advance feminist scholarship in Indonesia? So perhaps that two questions that I'm asking to you, that's our last questions, because we almost like run out of time. So if you could answer like the last question or the first one first, Kylie, please.
So yeah, the priority is yeah, like you said, every institutions need to especially start from primary educations, primary educations, and also and then engage different stakeholders to talk about these real issues, because this also a big challenge in our society, in especially in Aceh. We don't talk even about it is still taboo to talk about sex,
Right,
even it's
right.
in high school levels. So when you create a kind of curriculum, engage these feminist activists or feminist scholar to be part of curriculum developers. That
Right,
way,
right.
your organization, education, doesn't become a place to perpetuate patriarchy. Education should be a place to liberate. And one of them it should be from women's oppressions, because we still have this is real issue, but we don't recognize. But so what is my main point is the challenge is not many still have a problem in higher education to accept such an idea. But again, there are many feminist activists who become feminist academicians also, who work hard in the university and having kind extracurricular educations, not education, kind of feminist pedagogy, and also they have kind of human right educations as a part of extracurricular that university student can take. But what next step, what we can do is, why don't we bring this kind of human right education, gender education, as a part of mainstreaming in all universities? And also, because I have seen if principals, teachers doesn't have gender perspective in their own, they just want to separate boys because you can't this one, bullying, and you make fun of
Right.
girls. That's still happening
Yeah.
from even from primary. When we report to, I mean, like a principal or something, they said that, like you said, they blame you. This is, you are a feminist. This is the way how it's supposed to be. So this is a kind of, I mean, the problem is still rooted in top down, even in the top, in the awareness in the people in the leadership position is still doesn't have a willingness to accept this idea, or even they don't understand what is feminism. That's why, it's still kind of problematic. So what one thinks that the challenge is we don't have much feminist leaders who sit in the policy makers, so that can influence policy. Even, and most of them are males who sit in that kind of big positions, and most of these male I have seen that have no gender justice perspective. So once you don't have gender perspective, the things that you even put in your work is going to be patriarchal. It's still hard to, like, collaboration is very important, bringing stakeholders, feminist activists, religious leaders and academicians, and to sit together.
Right.
It takes time, but we are starting, we are in the middle of this still working, because it's part of learning for them too. We don't stop, because they just don't understand what it means to be feminist with it, what it means to have gender perspective, because just they don't understand yet. But maybe if we engage different, we bring feminist activists. Let me share one story. In Aceh, those who, this is become of a gift for some feminists who become academicians, so they can, have dialogues with religious leader. But they told me that it is hard. They accept our idea, but again, this is also a learning for them. I give them a book to read, and I give them research. I invite first time, and then they reject it, and I invite again, but I never stop it, because they believe that one day they will achieve what they aspires. Despite it's still, leadership is very male dominated still, and who doesn't understand exactly, even higher education, like you said, they understand, they know that gender-based violence exists, but they don't want to open up, because they don't want to look bad to the society, they don't want to look bad to the ministry, otherwise they will get label B. So what they think is about grade, even in their own thinkings, it's not about feeling who being heard in their organization. That's why we do need feminist leaders to sit in that positions, leadership positions.
Yeah, we need as many as possible, like people in the top rank, like who have the authority that can make a decision in universities, right? Like not only women, we need more women, of course, but not only the gender, right? Women as a gender or sex, but also we need to have like women's perspective, gender perspective, right? We need
mindset.
more men and women, exactly, who have like gender perspective, gender justice perspective, and mindset, and they also are really aware about the problems happens in the society, not only on campus, but also in society. And in campus, that there is no zero tolerance of the violence, like sexual violence, for instance, right? There is no like code of conduct of sexual violence, for instance, in campus and on campuses. And there are a lot of professors, lecturers, senior researchers, and they are involved and they have become perpetrators of this violence. So that's like ironic. That's so that like you said, Ellie, like education plays an important role, a key role, right, in changing mindsets, attitudes, perspectives, right? So I think like the collaboration, that's the key, right? The key, like that we can overcome at least that we can prevent like any violence, like you said, bullying, for instance, body shaming, right? That
Yes.
sexist jokes. That's still a lot on campuses, even like among the professors.
Yes.
Right, among the professors who have like
Yeah.
high education from abroad, but it doesn't really make them aware of gender issues, of sexual violence, for instance.
Yeah.
So yeah, education, we have a lot of homework, education, changing policy, advocacy campaign. So we still like keep fighting. Don't give up, never give up. So even though today is the last day of the commemoration or collaboration of 16 days activism or campaign anti-gender based violence, but I think like every day we have to campaign the anti-gender based violence. So every day it becomes a site of fighting, right? Every day, it should be every day. It's supposed to be every day, not only for the 16-day activism or campaign, but it's supposed to be every day. We have to stop gender-based violence. So we run out of time, but I really still want to talk to you, Kylie. Like there's still a lot of questions in my mind. I'm like, but yeah, unfortunately, we have like time constraints. Unfortunately, we have to end our conversation for tonight. I will not conclude anything from our conversation for you guys, but thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you so much, Kak Ellie Zarni from Biren, Aceh.
Thank you.
But before I close or end this conversation or this live on Instagram, so there is one, I think two quick announcement. The first one Let's Talk is having a talk show on Sunday, this Sunday night. That's 12, right? Yeah, December 12th on 7 p.m. until 9:30 p.m. or 21, it's 19:00 WIB, Western Indonesian time, or 7 p.m. So it's Sunday night, okay? So the talk show is about the feminization of poverty and the economic empowerment for women. So we are we are inviting 5 resource persons. So there is Mbak Nani Zulminarni from PEKA, Yayasan PEKA, director and founder of Yayasan PEKA, and the director of Ashoka, and Roma Hidayat from Lombok. He's the organizer and the director of ADBMI, Migrant Workers in Lombok, and Grace Dewi. She's a PhD. She finished her PhD in economy, so she's an economist and strategic futures Indonesia. And there is Kak Rini Rizwani. So she is the main actor of the UMKM. And the other one is Muhammad Firdaus from ASKUK and Institut Kapal Perempuan. So we also provide sign language interpreter, Indonesian Sign Language, or Bisindo. So we invite you guys, to join on the Zoom, Let's Talk Zoom. So we please keep updated, and please follow Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, Let's Talk, and also please subscribe Let's Talk YouTube, because we always live stream on Let's Talk YouTube channel. So for other activities or other programs of Let's Talk, yeah, please keep updated on Let's Talk social media. And also we invite you guys to send an article about feminism, gender, anything related to feminism and gender and the intersection with other issues like disabilities or difable, religion, ethnicities, class, gender minorities, or the minorities of the sexual and sexual orientation, or about sexuality, etc., etc. So that's it. for tonight. It's 2 hours, Kak Ellie. Sorry for the extra time,
No,
but
it's
really
okay.
enjoy talking to you. So
I
hopefully we
also,
can meet again.
yeah,
If
I'm
not in
also
Aceh,
happy.
maybe
Hmm.
in, yeah, maybe in USA, right?
Yes.
Okay, are you coming back, right, to the state?
Yeah, but maybe. Yeah,
Okay,
I
yeah,
would like to
hopefully.
visit. Yeah, sometimes.
Okay, sure. Yeah, hopefully we meet either in Aceh or somewhere in Indonesia or
So
in
you will
USA.
be until when in Indonesia?
January.
Oh,
Yeah, hopefully.
January. Yeah.
We're still applying visa right now. Yeah, we're applying visa. And I still
Okay.
have my research in Cirebon. So I just arrived in Cirebon
Mm-hmm.
now, just like that's why I haven't taken shower yet. I'm still tired from Medan. Like we have a road trip,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like on December 4th until now. And now I
Mm-hmm.
already arrived in Cirebon and continue my research, my ethnography in Indramayu
Oh,
after
yeah.
this. Yeah.
Good luck with your studies
Yeah.
and
Thank you
everything.
so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kylie, one more time. Thank you so much. Ellie Zarni from Biren Banda Aceh, and I'm Ira. I'm from Cirebon right now, and have a good one. Have a good night, and greetings from Let's Talk.
Thank you.
Bye. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.